again, and welcome to Forum for a Better Understanding. It's a joy to be back again this week because we're continuing a conversation that we started 21 months ago with Yusuf Estes and resumed last week, actually, if you were here. He is one of those Islamic speakers internationally known who spends most of the year teaching, sharing, and letting people from all over the world understand his own finding God in Islam at age 47. And we are so glad that once again he's here to help us appreciate how it is that a program like this, the Forum, becomes a vehicle for his own work and becomes almost an antithesis to the resistance and the negativity of many people out there that can't appreciate the power of dialogue and mutual acceptance of different perspectives. On that note, Yusuf, you may want to introduce yourself as to why it is that once again we're here and where it is we want to begin that conversation where we left off last week.
One of the things that I do whenever I'm addressing an audience is to let them know that I'm just like anybody else, normal person, and let them relax. So I usually ask people, my name, by the way, is Yusuf. Can you say Yusuf?
Yusuf.
That's pretty good. My wife still says useless.
Well, yeah, but she was thinking of something else. She was probably confusing you with someone else.
But the idea when I'm traveling like that is to be able to reach to the person's heart, because the hearts are what it's all about. So it's not really just about the intellect. It's not just a matter of debating all the time, but it's a matter of reaching out to the hearts. And I really like that Bridge to Faith program we came up with. I was very inspired when I was here last time.
That's great.
And we called it Bridge to Faith. And it was initially just you and I on it. And then others got interested in it. We found many people who were interested in being on this.
Great. We want people to go to that site, not now when you're watching us, but at another time, bridgetofaith.com. Not only will you be able to find clips of programs and also insights and presentations from Yusuf Estes, but also a way to order the Quran, which we did mention last week, is at the very heart of Islam and also deserves that you have a copy of it if that is something you'd like to read as an important introduction to the faith of Islam.
Another thing they can do when they go to that website is to download the Quran. Yeah, it's downloadable in a PDF file or a program. We have a program that you can have, this program of Quran, where you can do research, you can do indexing, cross-indexing, different translations. There's I think we have 5 translations there. In addition to that is to use the English letters to pronounce the Arabic words.
Oh, wow. That would be a great help because at Temple, what's possible when I've gone, it's always nice to see Hebrew transliterated. It becomes almost manageable. But I didn't know, but I'm supposing it's possible to do an Arabic transliteration to be able to appreciate the beautiful words. Now, one thing we didn't say last week, but I've heard of it, that the form of the Arabic in the Quran is such magnificent Arabic that it is the Shakespeare version of Arabic. It is just the most...
Actually, it's more than... The Shakespearean is Elizabethan English, but the classical Arabic itself is, today, when it's taught in a university or anything, the Quran is going to be the foundation for it. When you want to pull from something, you have to go back and look to see what the Quranic usage was so you can get a more in-depth. The scholars of the language itself will refer to the Quran very, very often. The other thing is that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him himself, now keep in mind he was illiterate, yet when he spoke, his Arabic was very articulate. He was very perfect in what he did with that.
Now, one thing we were wanting to talk about, and we might as well begin with such a topic as this, the purpose of life in Islam. It's like we always think of someone going off into a mountain, going to a guru, and we think, won't they give us the purpose of life? In a nutshell, either in the Quran or in Islamic faith, what is the whole purpose of existence understood by Islam?
First of all, Jim, you're absolutely right that is a concept a lot of us have. I had that same concept as well, to consider that you have to go somewhere and meet this great guru who's going to open everything up and it's going to open like a big blossom in front of you. But in fact, that isn't my experience whatsoever. I found it just in the plain everyday living, what's around you all the time. And Islam is something constantly talking to us about guidance. And once I opened this heart up, cleaned out the heart, and I asked the Almighty to give guidance, I was surprised that the things started happening in my life. And it finally led me to an experience where I wanted to do what He wants me to do on His terms. Well, the word for that in Arabic is aslama, and it's the verb for the same word, Islam. To surrender, submit, obey, in sincerity and peace, the Almighty. That's what Islam is about. And you should be able to find it wherever you are. It shouldn't be that you have to go to a mountain or that you have to go to a retreat or to, the ocean or anything, although those things are nice. But it should be that you would find it wherever you are and be able to practice it wherever you are.
Which is exactly what we would think in our faith. It's the same thing. One can spend time at the beautiful, let's say, Triduum liturgies that we just celebrated a couple of weeks ago. Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Vigil, all those baptisms, Easter Sunday. And yet, if one is only looking for moments of experience and not that their daily existence is the Paschal mystery being lived out, you have to wait a year for the next fix. This is not going to work. It's your daily existence that we would find, both of us, the way that one grows in their faith, whichever faith it be.
Whenever a faith has a name, you can usually identify some of the characteristics by the name of the faith. Judaism is named for one tribe of the children of Israel, which is Judah. Hinduism is named for India, which is Hindustan. And Buddhism is named for Buddha. Yep. Christianity is misnamed because it says in the Bible itself they were never called Christians till Antioch. Yeah. But the word Catholic is the one that means universal.
That's good.
So this one, and they never changed it. When the Roman pagans took over that one sect of Christianity in 325 AD, they kept the name universal rather than to take the name Christian. That's why you don't find the word Christian in the Catholic Church. It says Roman Catholic Church, because the concept they had from the beginning was to be universal, not to be sectarian.
And then to break open for us Islam, tell us the importance of that concept as even a name. Unpack that for us.
Well, in fact, the Quran says that all the people since Adam who believed in God and did righteous works to the best of their ability would be forgiven for their sins and go to paradise, whether they be Christians or Jews or Sabians. This is mentioned in the Quran itself. Right. The clarification comes that once a prophet has come and he has laid it out for you, it's no longer permissible to accept a prophet before him, or some of the misteachings have became corrupted. So if somebody at the time of Moses said, well, I believe in Moses as God, but I don't want to take my legislation from him, I'd rather go back to Abraham, he'd be like, what? Or if somebody said, okay, I believe in David as a prophet, but I'm going to scratch what he says, I'm going to go back to Moses. So when Jesus comes, peace be upon him, then he lays out any legislation, then it's not permissible to go back, well, I don't like what he said, I'm going to go back to John the Baptist, who was before him by a few weeks or whatever, or I'm going to go back to Moses, or I'm going to go back to somebody else. So when Muhammad came, now watch this, peace be upon him, he's telling us that he doesn't have a new message from any of these. No. Plus, he's telling us Jesus is coming back in the last day. Well, on the surface, this sounds very Christian, but when you delve into it deeper, you will find that a lot of the Christian faith today would take exception to some of the things that Islam is saying. But they shouldn't get upset too much when you find that there's a bigger difference between many of the Christians than there is between Muslims and Christians in general.
Interesting concept that you would say that there could be, with a connection with Islam on many points, we may be, as Roman Catholics, in more sync over doctrine over political positions than with other non-Catholic Christian religions. So it is fascinating to look at that. But that's almost another topic that we'll want to talk with, perhaps with other non-Catholic Christian leaders.
That's a good idea.
Today, what I really hope you'll unpack is something you shared at the Woodward Library, which puts you in a non-Islamic center, a place where you're sharing probably with non-Islamic guests. You unpacked for them Islam and science.
Oh, yeah.
What was your main presentation centering on with those two topics, Islam and science?
Well, actually, we treat it as one topic because Islam is science. Because everything is created by God. So it should be that the religion of God would be very harmonious and homogeneous with anything you find in true science. Otherwise, there'd be some misconception somewhere. And in Islam, we're not having a problem with dating, for instance, dinosaurs and things like this.
Yeah.
We're not having that problem. We're also not having a problem with evolution. Because in the Quran, it's clear that God is the creator, al-Khaliq, but he's also the evolver, al-Bari. So when you find evolution in the creation, then this is Allah doing it. However, it is clear for anybody who wonders that we did not evolve from monkeys. And we have a lot of proof for that, but that's maybe, we'll go bridge to faith and get to all of that.
Interesting. So in a sense, Islam has always prized and really given a really strong emphasis to the science. Throughout history, medicine, mathematics, science, Islam led the world. In fact, so much of what science is now has its saving moments in the Islamic scholarship.
Well, the roots for investigation are found in the early scholars of Islam because they used to investigate sayings and traditions of Muhammad to be sure he really said it. So they developed a whole series of ways to position something and then observe, did he actually say this? Because we can investigate the person who says so to only so far. We know about you, where you're from, what you do, etc. But where did you get it from?
Yeah.
Now we're going to investigate that person. At any point in this chain that we're not able to get enough information about the one who says it, then we're not going to accept it. So that type of investigation has been brought forward in a lot of other sciences today. But it's very important because it's based on not just saying it's the truth, but finding out, is it really the truth?
We will be back in 1 minute with Yusuf Estes to clarify and open up for us more insights into Islam. But stay tuned. We're going to take a little break. Get your pencil out so you can mark down carefully that website where all of this can be found at greater depth. But right now, we're going to take a break. Stay tuned.
KNXT TV is proud to say thank you to all its viewers who have given their support for over 25 years. And only through your support is KNXT able to provide spiritual and informative programming. Please remember KNXT in your long-term support through wills, bequests, trust, and plan giving. Your gift is important to the future of Catholic television. Help preserve the strength of KNXT's message based on the teachings of Christ. Keep KNXT in your future plans.
Welcome back to the, I guess you might say, the final chapter of our 4 chapters this time around with Yusuf Estes. He's been sharing with us some very wonderful insights into his latest visit to Fresno, when he shared in many different venues his own passion for Islam and why he wants to share that with people all over the world, which he does most of the year. We're just glad that on his last leg of his trip, he was able to fit in 2 programs with us here at KNXT. Now, there was one venue that really surprised me, made me very excited, and I'm very interested. You spoke to the Mormon community here in Fresno on the topic of Islam and society. I'm wondering how that came about, being able to speak to the Latter-day Saints, and also how it went and what you told them about Islam and society.
Well, this was a great opportunity for me. I enjoyed it very much. They were very open, very receptive, and very kind and very sweet. It was lovely. It was very lovely. And what I told them when I started out was something I think that made them to understand where I'm coming from, as well as Muslims in general. Because I do have some experience with the Mormon Church in my past, a very good experience. And it was the only other religion I considered going to before I came to Islam.
Oh my.
So this got their interest right away.
I bet.
And how it came about was that there was a gentleman who I met while I was traveling overseas one time, and he and I were both always seeking out the same kinds of things. Places where people didn't smoke, didn't drink, places where they,
Yeah.
So, and I asked him finally, I said, well, what religion are you? And he said he was from the Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. And the more I observed this man, the more impressed I was. I also came across an article in a trade magazine for people who are doing janitorial work. And this happened up in Washington State. They had a conference up there one year. And after the stadium was emptied out, a big, huge convention center was emptied out, the company that goes in to clean it got angry because they said, you brought somebody else in and did our work, and we're going to sue you because our guys are supposed to do this work, blah, blah, blah. It turned out they said we didn't hire anybody. And it was the Mormons who had cleaned up after themselves so well that they thought some other company came because they did it better than they would.
Isn't that something?
And so this is showing us how you put your faith into works. Because if you really believe in your faith, you should do it. Now, Islam is teaching this to Muslims, even to move a scrap of something out of the way. Just move something out of the way of a believer is an act of charity for you. So we would like to see the Muslims look to their own faith and follow these beautiful teachings. Listen to this, that you're not a believer if you fill your stomach, go to sleep at night, while your neighbor's stomach remains empty.
Yep.
So they asked the Prophet Muhammad, who's my neighbors? He said, 40 in any direction. 40 in any direction.
40 what in any direction?
Houses.
Boy.
40 in any direction. So, and then he also tells us that let the one who really believes in Allah on the last day either say good things or be silent. And these little small things would sure make your life a lot better all day long.
It would. Now, so you knew you had an affinity with the disciples of Jesus Christ.
Our church was Disciples of Christ.
That's a beautiful church.
I was Disciples of Christ.
Yeah.
But they are the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
But you had this group, and what would have been the exact, let's say, message that they were able to internalize that you would want us to also share today, and how did they respond to it?
One of the things happened after the program. All of them came up to shake my hand, to talk to me and everything. And I was very impressed with their comments because they said, well, we're seeing now that the Muslims have a lot in common with us.
That's it. Yeah.
One of the topics I didn't get to talk about, which I wanted to tease them about, didn't happen, was about how many wives you could have.
That's right.
I wanted to go there, but we didn't ever get to it because I already know they only have one wife, just like we only have one wife, but it would have been fun to tease them a little bit.
Only because in its possibilities, Islam does allow multiple wives, as I'm understanding
Well, so do the Mormons.
Right.
But when it's not legal, you don't do it.
That's it. It depends, again, what country one is in. I had an Islamic friend when I lived in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, and it turned out he was the cook at the Christian hostel where I was working. And he told me, Jim, it's very expensive. He was admitting that though he had this possibility, it was also a burden for being able to be a good husband, to be able to
the thing
take
about
care.
that is that you would have to be absolutely fair with both.
That's it.
And it means that you would have to spend on them equally. So if you buy a house for this lady, you're buying one for that. Who's going to do that?
That's what he was admitting, that because I was saying, Charlie, is it possible that in Islam people have many wives? He said, I have two, and it's
Jim, this is like a pressure cooker. You let the pressure off of these guys, especially when they hit their 40s, they start looking around and everything. And in Islam, you tell them, listen, you know you can't do this. You can't have a girlfriend. You can't have a mistress. You could take another wife, though. No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So, but psychologically, it's a good release for a lot of these guys who have these notions, but then they think about it and they say, I don't really want to do that. But this keeps them away from something that's very, very bad.
Yep.
Adultery, fornication, this is something not acceptable in Islam.
Exactly. Now, one thing that I also thought was exciting when I looked at your venues was to speak at the Valley Crescent School, which is in town, the school for Islamic children. Mm-hmm. And you gave it an address there on the future of Islam. Made all the sense. You would talk to younger people about the future of Islam in America. What did you feel when you met these wonderful kids at Valley Crescent? And what was the message and what was the reception?
Usually when I talk to any children, and this was no exception, I like to emphasize how important it is for their relationship with their Lord, number one. But after that, just as it is in the Ten Commandments, the relationship with your parents is always the very next thing after your relationship with your Lord. The first 4 commandments in Exodus and Deuteronomy deal with the subject of worship. One God, no God beside God, no images of any kind, and not taking God's name in vain, and keeping the holy day. Those are 4 out of 10. Number 5 is not thou shalt not kill. It is to honor your parents, your mother and your father.
That's right.
It's the same in Islam exactly. If you look to the Quran, you'll find after your connection with your Lord, after you have this correct belief, immediately is how you treat your parents. And it's related to the extent that if you don't treat them properly, Allah, He's not even going to look at you on the Day of Judgment. So this is very keen. So I tell the children, how would you like to have good children when you grow up? Well, of course they would. You want them to have them be respectful and kind and generous and help you and be somebody you'd be really proud of them, right? They say yes. Islam teaches us how you treat your parents. Allah, He will give you children just like that. And there's nothing you can do about it. You treat your parents, that's how you're going to get those children. So give them good treatment.
Were they, in a sense, compared to children that we would find sometimes hard to maybe give a conference to? How were they receptive and responsive to you?
One of the things, Jim, that when you do the work that I do, you find that children are pretty much the same everywhere. They don't really have yet adopted some of these prejudices. They don't have all of the hang-ups that we do. So the children around the world are pretty much the same. What we find in Islam is that the teaching is that all children are already born on the fitra, or the natural inclination of doing God's will.
Wow, nice.
That means that children are born innocent. We say innocent is a newborn baby.
Richard?
Well, okay, the same is true. If you look to the New Testament, you'll find the teaching of Jesus, suffer the children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven.
Exactly.
And we have that. We believe that these children are all born in this perfect state. If a child dies, we don't worry about the parent's religion. If the child dies, we say all children go to heaven, regardless of the religion of the parents. Now, if you're in my position is in clergy, where you're dealing as a chaplain, dealing with families, they lose a child. They say, well, we're not Muslim, so where do you say our child goes? We say, it doesn't matter what you are. It matters what the child was. The child went to paradise, and not only that, the child is telling God, let my parents be with me. Let my parents be with me.
Beautiful.
This is the natural teaching of Islam.
Now, stretching from the children, now let's broaden it. We've talked about parents and children. You gave an address at the Masjid on the Brotherhood of Islam, the Brotherhood concept. Unpack that, because that's a very important one in Christianity too. The whole family concept, all of us are brothers and sisters of Jesus. Where does Islam go with this brotherhood concept?
There are several references in the Quran to Adam being the first man, and that Eve is the first woman, that she comes from a bone from him. And that after that, all of the people are really coming from there. All the tribes, all the nations, all the people are really only coming from these two. So the emphasis in Islam is immediately a human brotherhood that's there for all of us. You and I are definitely brothers in humanity. Then it takes us to another level, and this is the brothers in faith. So when you come to the realization of true monotheism, then you become a brother in faith. Then you can even go higher, and these are going to be the brothers who are not just saying it, but they're doing it. And it's not a matter of what my mouth is doing, but it's a matter of what my hands and feet are doing. And I'm looking out after my brothers, taking care of them, and giving from myself, and not expecting anything in return. So this is the kind of brotherhood we're talking about.
And this brotherhood, we've had programs before with Dr. Ali, especially talking about the people of the book are obviously so important to Islam, which would mean Judaism and Christianity and Islam, all of us are closer together than the average person, because we do have this concept of the one God, no? Is what unites us.
Exactly true that we do have the same origin, but we're going to say that one of the things Islam is telling us, don't make the mistakes of the previous generations. Don't deviate out with this or that or the other. So whereas we'll say that, and then we've already mentioned another program, from the Jews, Christians, and Sabians, there are those who go to paradise. This is clear. This is in the Quran. And We already mentioned the stipulations that go with that. But at the same time, we're going to be taught that, look, these guys made these mistakes. They divided into all these different groups. Don't divide into groups. And it even has a commandment like that, that hold fast, all of you, to the rope of Allah, and don't divide up into groups. And these groups will always wind up getting so far away that they'll mislead people to hell. So this is what we want to avoid at all costs, is dividing up. It's better to be unified. You want to talk about brotherhood? We're trying to call all human beings to come together on at least a basic premise. There is a God. And if you don't want to accept that, you want to be an atheist, at least get along with those people who believe and don't try to divide them up into these groups, because it causes problems.
We only have about a minute, and this is a very loaded question to pull at the end, but it might fit in right where we're going. Help us understand a little bit the important differences, briefly, Sunni Shia, which seem to be commonly used as different forms of Islam, along with Sufism. You've got about 30 seconds. Can you at least clarify why there are distinct groups in Islam?
You said it right. It's a loaded question with 30 seconds to say it. I would just have to tell you to go to Bridge to Faith to get more details. But all of the people who believe there's one God and use the Quran and believe in Prophet Muhammad, they've got a chance. We pray for everybody to get to go to paradise. We're not trying to rule anybody out. We're trying to see how many we can get in.
That is the best way to end the program, I think, is to remind ourselves that whatever we did today that you enjoyed, or whatever you wish we had covered, or whatever you thought we covered too briefly and really wanted to hear more, bridgetofaith.com. It's where you'll see things like this and much, much more. Whenever Yusuf Estes said there's a possibility to download the Quran, imagine the magnitude, if that can happen, how many other things, how many concepts could be unpacked. How many questions that you have could be answered. bridgetofaith.com. I want to thank once again Yusuf Estes for deciding to stay in town for an extra morning to be able to come into the studio and break open this program with us. We'll be back again next week. We hope you'll join us and enjoy one more chance to share with you a forum for a better understanding.